Howdy.
Hello.
Welcome to Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two Girls, One Ghost. We are your ghostesses. That is Corinne.
Hello?
I am Sabrina. Oh, I meant to change my shirt. Please hold. I'm ready now.
Okay, perfect. Outfit change is complete. Sabrina's in her witchy new sweatshirt.
Witchy, because this is a
From a
witchy
listener.
episode.
This is a very witchy episode. I'm excited about this episode.
Me too. And I really do wish that, so a couple years ago for my birthday, you got me this amazing book called The Big Book of the Dead or something like that. And it's a bunch of obituaries throughout history of famous people and just like notable people in history and their obituaries. And it was just so cool.
But
I don't have it.
no longer. You're in Massachusetts. It's in LA.
It's en route.
It's en route. It'll come.
But it also reminded me of the Edgar Allan Poe episode because the man that wrote Edgar Allan Poe's obituary was an enemy.
Right. Yeah.
We'll get into the episode in a second. But when I was doing the research for this, I saw that it was commonplace for people to use obituaries to kind of get back at their enemies.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That seems wrong.
It is wrong.
Yeah.
Objectively.
It is wrong, but also it makes me curious, like, how did they even get in the position of being allowed to write the obituary in the first place?
Good question.
Like, how was that their role?
Doesn't feel fair.
No. But also, I'm curious, like, how did they swindle their... It's not fair. It doesn't seem fair. But also, like, how did the family agree to that?
Or was there no family to step in to write it? Or also, I think back to, like, olden days where, you know, some people maybe weren't all literate.
That's true. So it was a little bit more limited in terms of...
Who could write it?
Who could write it
Yeah.
in certain areas. Damn. I mean, now I feel like there's kind of been a little bit of a move that I've heard where people have started writing their own.
I was just going to say, I saw a couple of people who wrote their own.
Yeah.
And I like it.
Me too. You can poke fun at yourself without anyone else being upset.
Right.
You can say little cheeky things.
Very
you can
cheeky things.
Add a little humor. You can maybe tell your deepest, darkest secret.
Yes. Confess to things.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And no one can get mad at you because you're dead.
You're dead. They can get mad at you, but you just don't have to deal with their anger.
But then they have guilt associated with their anger at
Depends
you.
on how you died.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of Unsolved
And who you were.
Mysteries. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was one, season 12 of Unsolved Mysteries has a lot of like paranormal medium type of stuff happening. But the way it's scripted sometimes is hilarious because it's like over the reenactments. And there was one where it was like, a small town bully was on the phone during a lightning storm and he gets struck by lightning. And the recreation is him getting struck and literally a dummy flying and landing on the bed like across the room. But it was just very funny, like the way that it was like a small town bully and then he like turned over a new leaf because he got struck by lightning. And then he started seeing the paranormal and all this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I've never heard anyone be called a big town bully.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Can we just say bully? Like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
The population that you live in.
There are big town bullies, and I feel like the big town bullies are just like politicians and shit.
Whitey Bulger, gang members.
Big town.
Big town, big bully.
I was bullied.
Yeah, we both were. That's why we're together now. That's why we're like this, and we're now together.
That's why we're like this. There's always a reason.
There's always a reason. Like, I was bullied. I'm like, bitch, I know. Same.
I was called cool way too many times and not in the nice way.
Oh.
In a constipated, overweight, out of style loser kind of way.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah.
You know what's sad is I feel like, I mean, I don't have the perspective of someone who wasn't bullied in middle school because I was. So I don't know how it would be different if I wasn't. But like, I feel like we were bullied so bad and then became our own bullies.
Right. But then I also asked myself, does everyone experience a version of bullying? I feel like yes.
Yeah.
Because I also think about the people who were bullies, were they bullied at home in their own way? And then
100%. That's why I forgave
your bully
because I understood what was going on.
And then we're all kind of mean to ourselves because society gives us these expectations of things that are just unrealistic.
Ugh.
Be kinder to yourself today.
Be kinder to yourself.
Maybe write your own obituary and remind yourself of all the great things you've done.
Yeah.
Do a morbid thing to remind yourself of how good you are.
Oh, man. Now I'm like trying to not think of middle school. I'm an adult now. I'm fine. I've moved on. Everybody's happy. Everybody has their lives. We're all good.
We're all good. Okay, so the idea here was we were doing research on obituaries of people who are witchy or just
magical in some way.
Based
on their obituary.
Right. And I think what I've learned from this is that everyone's magical in some way.
And you hope whoever writes your obituary captures that magic.
Yes. And I don't know who wrote this obituary, but it is pure magic. This is the obituary of Holly McCray Blair. Holly Blair exploded into glitter and bats on August 17th, 2020. She is survived by 4 spoiled cats, 2 stinky dogs, 3 bad birds, a turtle, and an utterly useless frog named Fred, as well as 3 children and a husband of little to no importance.
It's just so good.
Her remains will be interred under a tree with the ridiculous multitude of animals she rescued, both wild and domestic. Her future plans include drinking beer with Terry Pratchett and flying across the moon on her broomstick on Halloween. She has also promised to communicate with us from beyond via the cockatiel psyche. We ask that everyone carve extra jack-o'-lanterns on Halloween this year in her honor. All hail the Wicked Witch of Juniper Road.
I'm so curious if this was something she wrote for herself or if she just had like the best relationship ever with her husband and her husband just like completely knew what she would, how she would want this written.
I actually don't know who wrote it. I thought that a husband of little to no importance was a comment that my mom, because my mom likes to make comments about my dad a lot in a negative way.
Yeah.
That I thought it was like she and her husband were no longer together.
Oh, but she said the same about her kids.
I thought she had 3 children and then the husband was of little to no importance.
Oh.
But
Got
maybe.
it. But then also like if you were the husband, maybe this is kind of like a way to joke.
Yeah.
A little cheeky joke.
I like
being
that
like,
version of it.
She had a menagerie of animals
that were her babies,
children, and so I was on the back.
We were low on the list.
Low on the list. Last person named in the obituary.
But then it was so cool because on the website where you can like a bunch of people could send flowers and stuff, and then there were all these notes that Holly Blair became kind of infamous.
Really?
And people all over the world, even to this day, comment on the like website, adding paying their own respects, saying, I'll be riding a broomstick alongside you on Halloween. Like when I pass over, I wish I knew you during your life. You seem amazing. As far as people know, no one has seen her spirit on Halloween, but the town does carve extra jack-o'-lanterns every Halloween for her.
See, this is so magical.
It is so magical.
I feel like this obituary does circulate on social media.
It does.
Which is how I'd first, because it is so short too, that it's so easy to put on social media.
And we have a picture of her.
Holly Blair, what a magical woman.
She was such a magical woman. Fiercely magical. Exploded into glitter and bats.
I know.
That's how I want to go.
Me too.
Yeah.
It sounds so nice. I do want to shout out this one account on TikTok called Tips from Dead People.
Oh.
It's this woman who goes and she finds these like really interesting obituaries and reads them. And there was this one woman, Eva Mondon, who I'm not going to read her obituary, but it was quite beautiful and very honest and raw. But there's a couple parts that I just want to read from hers that I thought were so
Did
incredible.
she write it herself or?
No, someone else wrote it for her. It said, too impatient to wait for reincarnation, Eva lived several lifetimes concurrently. And like talks about all the different things that she did. I was like, that is really such a beautiful way to put it. And then at the very end, it said that Eva, she loved to hand out her card, which reads, Eva Mondon, storytelling, matchmaking, advice sought and unsought, advisor to the lifelorn, word of mouth. I'm like, that is so cool.
Sick. We should make 2 girls on ghost cards that say that, like word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth. Oh my God, Eva. She eventually became a Vermonter. So that's why I was like, Eva, I already feel connected to her.
There were a bunch of people who I found through doing research of this that I'm like, I want to do a whole story on them because they lived such elaborate lives.
Interesting lives, yeah.
Yeah, and we're like psychics and mediums and
totally.
There was like this one woman, she was an infamous psychic that truly like the CIA would do tests with her and they would utilize her. They actually just recently publicized the records.
Really?
Yeah. So I was reading them.
Yeah, please. I'm super intrigued.
Yeah. What was her name? It was like some like Lottie something.
I love that. I also love that we're doing this witchy obituaries because I feel like one of the things that is a common theme throughout all of them is that it's people who are so unapologetically themselves.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Feels good to talk about people who are connected to their inner being and to their community. And that is extremely true of Sybil Leek.
Ooh.
She was born on February 22nd, 1917, and she passed at 65 years old on October 26th, 1982. So close to Halloween.
So close.
Author, astrologer, antique dealer, entrepreneur.
So many things.
I know. All the things I aspire to do.
Yeah, literally.
Leek wrote more than 40 books on astrology, ESP, and witchcraft. She's best known for her international bestseller, Diary of a Witch. She's also known for The Complete Art of Witchcraft, My Life in Astrology, and her magazine, Sybil Leek's Astrology.
Wait, I feel like we should read her books in our journey for witchcraft.
Sure we should.
What was the first one called?
It's called Diary of a Witch.
Okay.
By Sybil Leek.
I'm going to order that.
In the late 1950s, Sybil lived in Burley Village, Hampshire, England, where she was a high priestess of the Horsa Coven and 3 Acres Coven, unconfirmed, in the New Forest. She was often seen walking through the village wearing a long black cloak with her pet jackdaw, Mr. Hotfoot Jackson, perched on her shoulder. It basically looks like a crow. Like she had a pet crow, which if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see a bunch of photos like throughout me reading this of her, but I'm going to show you some of them now because she could not be more incredible. And I want to literally frame the picture of her like with the crow on her head holding.
The crow on her head.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I want a crow so bad. Wow.
Miss Leek owned several antique shops and worked as a reporter specializing in forest ways. As she spent nearly...
this is literally what you aspire to be.
As she spent nearly a year living with Romani, her knowledge of the New Forest was excellent. The BBC filmed a documentary about her life, calling her Britain's most famous witch. And due to her notoriety, her home was besieged by people wanting to see and talk to a real witch.
Wow.
In the early 60s, Miss Leek toured America to promote her first book, A Shop in the High Street, in 1962. When her landlord refused to renew her lease, Leek immigrated to the United States and became a media favorite.
Wow.
TV, radio, and print media featured Sybil, including To Tell the Truth, The Mike Douglas Show, Oh My Word, and The David Frost Show. Barbara Walters interviewed Sybil twice on The Today Show.
Oh my gosh.
In the mid-1960s, Sybil established a craft line in Pennsylvania, calling it the North American Arm of Horsa. In Houston and Las Vegas, Sybil joined forces with authors Charmaine D. and Tarot Star in confounding a new tradition of Wicca called Sacred Pentagraph, which they based on the traditional lodge system. Sybil died of cancer in Melbourne, Florida in 1982. Sacred Pentagraph and the U.S. Horsa Coven of the Wolfa are still active with hive groups. I love calling them hives. With hive groups around the country in northwestern Canada. And this was written by Taryn Archer, the bio was. And then I wanted to look up just a few more facts about Sybil because I was like,
she's fascinating.
She's so interesting.
She started so many different Wicca groups. Like how?
Yeah, so many. So, okay, here's what I found. So she's authored 64 books, which were largely about witchcraft, the supernatural, astrology, herbalism, and parapsychology. So interesting. She also had a bunch of predictions. Okay. Some of them did not come true, but some of them that did were the assassinations of both President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert Kennedy. And her ancestors have practiced witchcraft dated back to year 1134.
I so badly wish I could say I come from a long line of witches.
Right? She came from a long line of witches.
And she can say that she did, you know? Yes. Like she can prove it and she knows it.
And you can just see it in her.
Yeah.
You look at any of the photos, she just looks like the happiest witch on the corner.
With her little, not a crow, but basically on her
whatever
on
animal
her head.
That is, the equivalent. It looks like a crow or a raven.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
See, this again proves to me, you know, people say the world is very small. And I do think like there are moments that make the world feel like small world moments. But then you start to look at the nitty gritty. You look at these people who I've never heard of Sybil before, but
no.
She is an incredible,
she was one of the most famous witches.
Famous person. It's just wild to me how many people are so magical and yet are not known and go under the radar, and how there are so many people and there's just little pockets that you kind of understand. You're limited in terms of how many people you can know and how much knowledge you have.
And it's also like when people have passed generations before, like decades before us, like we don't hear their names as much. Like
because they're not in
curious,
the public domain right now. Yeah.
Right. I wish I could ask. Well, I can't ask my mom, but I would doubt she would know. But I'm just like, I wonder if my mom, like, if she would recognize her name. Like, if this was
interesting.
Someone, if she was on the Today Show and stuff, was this like enough of a, was she enough of a personality?
Name? Yeah.
That back then people did know her.
But she passed away in 82. Mm-hmm. So maybe not.
Well, I guess people here can tell us.
Do you know who Sybil is?
Now you do.
Now you do. Okay. This next one I have is not witchy, really, but I had to share it with you.
Okay.
Because when I was doing my research, this specific man and his obituary came up multiple times because of how iconic it is. And I feel like
so intrigued.
You are going to love this man as much as I am. Okay. This man, Raymond Brownley, Big Al.
Big Al.
Is short-tempered squirrel whisperer who took fashion advice from nobody.
It could end there. I'm already in.
You're in. So I'm going to read his obituary. I'm going to skip over some of the parts because it's like, I'm going to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Raymond Allen Brown was born December 30th, 1931 of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Died on September 21st, 2014 at the age of 82, but his larger-than-life persona and trademark stubbornness will not be forgotten. Affectionately known as Big Al by his family and many friends, he was a plumber by trade, a tremendous gardener, and avid hunter. He also enjoyed fishing and proudly displayed the stuffed barracuda he caught back in 1965, much to the dismay of his wife, Agnes Bargo Brownley, to whom he was married to for 24 years. He despised canned cranberry sauce, wearing shorts, cigarette butts in his driveway, oatmeal, loudmouth know-it-alls, Tabasco sauce, reality TV shows, and anything to do with the Kardashians.
We love a person who knows what they like and what they do not like.
And it was important to him that what he did not like was in his obituary. But Big Al had many loves too. He loved his wife. He also dearly loved his children and grandchildren. Famously opinionated and short-tempered, Big Al handed these qualities down to his daughter.
I feel like the daughter had to write this obituary because if I were the daughter and my mom wrote that about me, I'd be so mad.
Maybe. Or it's just like, that's the case.
Yeah.
He also loved milkshakes, fried shrimp, the Steelers, the Playboy Channel, Silky's Gentlemen's Club, taking afternoon naps in his recliner, hanging out at the VFW, playing poker, eating jelly beans by the handful, and his hunting dogs, his favorite being Holly Hill Rip Van Winkle, a loyal beagle that answered to the name of Rip. Big Al was world-renowned for his lack of patience, not holding back his opinion, and his knack for telling it like it is. He was highly proficient at cursing. He liked his four-letter words just about as much as four-wheel drive pickup trucks. He was a connoisseur of banana cream pie.
Oh, yes.
And a firm believer that ham sandwiches should only be served on Mancini's bread. He always told you the truth, even if it wasn't what you wanted to hear. He was generous to a fault, a pussycat at heart, and yet he sugarcoated absolutely nothing. To quote Winston Churchill, he was a riddle wrapped in mystery inside an enigma. His fondness of spaghetti westerns was only surpassed by his love of bacon, beer, and butter pecan ice cream.
I feel like I have a lot of the same flavor profiles as him.
Let me tell you how many times I thought of you as reading this.
I only have disagreed with one thing because I love canned cranberry sauce.
Yes.
But I'm there with all the other choices.
Quite a teller of tales, Big Al's elaborate stories often were punctuated with the phrase, "And that's when I kicked his ass." He was also on a first-name basis with the four horsemen of liquor, Jack, Jim, Johnny, and Jose.
Oh, this is so funny.
Big Al had strong beliefs in which he never wavered. Dog shit makes the best garden fertilizer. Heinz ketchup does not belong on a hot dog. And PennDOT should be embarrassed of the never-ending construction, detours, and potholes on Route 28.
Called out.
This depression baby was ahead of his time with being green, as evidenced by the approximately 87 I cannot believe it's not butter containers stacked neatly in his kitchen cupboard. The biggest challenge was actually finding the butter in his refrigerator with 13 containers of leftovers that all looked the same. Big Al was known for his timeless words of wisdom, including, life is hard, but it's harder if you're stupid. And
Wait, I love that. I know I can't use it because people will be upset, but I just wish I had the personality where I could just fully
say
use
that.
it and people would be like, that's just
Corinne.
Corinne.
His other words of wisdom was, don't be a jackass. And now this is my favorite sentence of the entire obituary. He had a lifelong menage a trois with his homemade chili and gas X.
I did not know where that was going, but that's hysterical. Wow.
Isn't it amazing? He had a great fondness for sardines on crackers, stuffed cabbage, which he lovingly called hunky hand grenades, making turtle soup, and eating BLTs. His famous holiday eggnog had enough whiskey to grow hair on your chest. Also known as a squirrel whisperer, he communicated with the local red-tailed squirrels and fed them peanuts out of his hand. What he lacked in stature, he compensated with an overabundance of charisma, charm, and feistiness. Big Al took fashion advice from no one, with his trademark white V-neck t-shirts and strategically coiffed comb-over. His comfort far outweighed any interest in the latest fashion trends. He was well-stocked with white shoe polish to keep his tennis shoes looking pristine for prime rib dinners at Longhorn Steakhouse.
This is the first time I'm learning that there is white shoe polish.
I didn't know that either.
Thank you, Big Al. You taught us something.
In the last few years, Big Al's short-term memory loss was getting the best of him. On December 29th, 2012, the day before his 81st birthday, he had a stroke that was a turning point in the decline of his health. His devout feistiness and stubbornness has served him well throughout his life, and even in his waning months, he was a model of strong will and sheer determination right up until the end of his journey here on Earth. He will be greatly missed and fondly remembered by many friends, neighbors, nieces, nephews, and bunheads. And then they said thank you to all the members of hospice who helped take care of him in his last years in life. But the celebration of life luncheon was at noon, and there was a mandatory shot and a beer in a final big toast for Big Al's honor, the greatest dad in the world. So maybe it was written by the daughter.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Isn't
Oh
that
my God,
amazing?
that's hilarious.
Menage a trois with his homemade chili and gas
X. It's so good.
It's so good.
Oh my God. What a guy.
What a guy. Then I felt like it was magical just in the sense of, one, how much joy it brought me while reading it, and two, how much joy I thought it would bring you while reading it. And then just clearly this man was just so unapologetically himself and just could be remembered in such a way.
I know there's this quote. I don't know who said it, but there's a quote that says, to be known is to be loved. And I feel like that is exactly what his daughter, or whoever wrote this, that's how I feel about it, where it's like they just know so much, like so many little details, like all the just like little oddities of his personality are on display, but in a way that should be celebrated.
100%.
Which is so sweet.
It is so sweet.
Wow. R.I.P. Big Al.
Big Al.
But man, what an obituary.
I know.
That's freaking incredible.
It's a good one. Is she for hire to write obituaries?
Yeah, can she write ours? I don't think I know that many details about myself.
I could write yours.
You think?
Should I write one for you?
We should write each other's obituaries.
And present them to each other. It's kind of fun.
That is kind of fun. We could do that on Patreon. Okay. This one I found again on TikTok. Bless the TikTok app. Michelle Smith on TikTok. She found this next witch, and when I was scrolling, Michelle's video found me. This was published in the Morning Call newspaper on November 11th, 1888 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And there was an entire section on page 5 dedicated to this woman who passed away.
Wow.
Well, it was kind of like an obituary of sorts. This is a glimpse into the life of the Pennsylvania German witch, Mother Fisher.
Ooh.
Mother?
It's
already so witchy just to be called Mother.
Seriously. Because I also imagine that she might have kids, but I'm imagining that she has everyone call her mother. It's not just children. It is.
Yeah, everyone calls her Mother.
Yeah. It's like people should call us sister witch.
Sister witch. We have no idea when that episode comes out.
No
we
idea.
Referenced it. I feel like we're going to be saying it before we even had the conversation. But in case this comes out before then, we call each other Sister Witch now.
Yeah, it's a new thing. It is so weird. Our timelines are just like so crossed.
Jumping all over the place.
So out of order. We're just like, whatever our research is done, we're like, let's go. Let's record this one. This one comes out in November. Great.
And then the next week we're recording one that comes out like next week. Yeah. Makes no sense.
Sorry.
But it's just how we have to go.
Stay tuned. I mean, bear with us. And also stay tuned.
And also, hey, just hang on.
Just sit back, relax, and shut up.
Just shut up. Take what we give you. We're barely getting through this, okay?
Just listen.
Okay, the title of this article, I don't understand some of these words. I assume they're Latin, but it's Scihat hexakekna.
Can I see what it looks like?
Yeah. Scihat hexakekna.
I feel like you just said a spell.
Oh, God. What if I said something really bad? I tried to translate it, and I was struggling.
Okay.
Google was struggling. Not me.
Yeah, it's Google's fault.
I put in zero effort other than say,
maybe
these
that's
words
something
translate.
that was found like in her journal or something.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
Someone can let us know.
Mm-hmm.
So the article reads, Scihat hexakekna, a Pennsylvania German witch who died in Lancaster County recently. What the people believed her capable of doing, and how she lived this belief for her own advantage. A queer story of 19th century superstition.
Ooh.
What a way to get the reader to read that whole article.
Hooked. That makes me want to like pick up newspapers, the like physical newspaper, and start reading them again.
Yeah.
Because
I've had that thought too.
Because I feel like you don't know what you're going to find.
No. And also, it's just something nice about the ritual of just reading something in person and like feeling it, flipping the page. Like, just, it feels slow living.
Right.
You know?
I also think about when, and you're about to have a kid, but when I have kids, like to me, childhood was my mom laying out old pieces of newspaper for me to like paint on top of. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a newspaper, what do you use?
Right. And also, it's just like, if we want to read the news, I feel like we do it on our phones. And I don't really want my kid's memory of me to always be looking
on your
at my phone. Okay, so again, this is not an obituary. Rather, this is just an article about Mother Witch, or Mother Fisher, who is a Mother Witch.
Who is Mother Witch, yeah.
A few days ago, there died in the county of Lancaster near Reinholdsville an old woman who was known far and wide as Hexafrau, right? Because she's German. And whom not a few saw consigned to Mother Earth with feelings of infinite relief. They cared not so much what had become of her immortal part, now that she had gone to settle with the fellow who, they were fully assured, had had a mortgage on her soul for half a century.
What?
As for the fact that she was dead at last, and past the power of working them the harm that they had believed her fully capable of.
Wait, okay, so this man had a mortgage on her soul?
I think they're basically saying, like, they're less concerned about her dying and potentially, like, going to hell, which some people might have thought that she was going to, that the devil was coming for her, and more relieved that she did die because some of them feared her and some of the things that her powers could do to them.
Gotcha. Okay.
A correspondent furnishes this. Also, this is
written in the 1800s.
Written in the 1800s, and some of the words are, like, misspelled with how the
lingo,
the ink bled. So I'm trying my best to fill in some of the gaps here.
Okay.
A correspondent furnishes the subjoined facts pertaining to this strange woman's life, and the reader will find it as interesting as it appears incredible. Barbara Fisher was nearly 90 years old and had lived alone in a rude hut in the mountains a few miles from Reinholdsville for more than 60 years.
Why was it a rude hut?
I don't know, but she's literally the witch in the woods at this point.
Yeah, truly.
The belief in witches and the power of certain persons to drive them away still prevails to a surprising degree among the simple German farmers of Lancaster, and Mother Fisher was one of the most frequently consulted of many of the Hexawiver, who yet abound thereabouts. The writer saw Mother Fisher 2 years ago in her hut. She was then active and apparently physically strong, but much bent and wrinkled. Oh, little hunchback.
Then she was 88 when 2 years ago before she died.
She was old.
Yeah.
Her hair was white as snow, and long white hairs grew from her chin in such profusion as to almost give them the dignity of a beard.
You know what? I've had to pluck a few hairs from my chin as well. So
yes.
It happens.
Her eyes were as bright and sharp as a hawk's, and altogether she was the most striking person to look at.
Oh.
A typical witch herself. And, in fact, she possessed the power, according to the belief of the people of her community, of bewitching her neighbors, their cattle, their wells, and what she chose, a qualification that made her an object of great fear to them as well as of veneration.
I love this.
Right?
Fear me, but also admire me.
Right. This is her, Mother Fisher. It was during the writer's visit to this peculiar community that he had the extraordinary illusion of the credulity and superstition of its people. A well-to-do farmer had brought suit before the justice of the peace to recover damages for the loss of a dog, which he gravely charged her with having killed by bewitching it.
Okay.
The justice, instead of refusing to consider such a charge, put the case to trial and on the evidence presented gave judgment against Mother Fisher.
Basically, they accused her of doing it?
I guess, yeah. The woman had the reputation of being a vindictive witch, and she lived alone in a small cabin, her family and neighbors shunning her.
Oh.
The charge made against her by the farmer was that she had bewitched his dog and refused to drive the witch away until he paid her a certain sum of money. So she's blackmailing, basically. He refused, and upon his refusal, the dog began running wildly about in a circle, suffering great agony until at last fell down from exhaustion and died.
Oh, geez.
A large number of witnesses were examined in the cause, and all gave testimony as to having been sufferers of the defendant's power of witchcraft.
Well, this makes me sad because it does feel a little bit Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
Like,
And Bathsheba.
yeah. It also makes me think a bit of Hannah Cranna, where I almost hope that this woman was like, you know what? If they're all going to believe it, then I'm just going to lean into it.
Right. And who knows if she did or didn't. Maybe she was a little bit evil, a little bit good.
Aren't we all?
One witness swore that he had been solicited by the defendant not to appear in the case on behalf of the plaintiff and that he had refused to comply with her request. A few days afterward, his well became dry and his cows gave bloody milk. His baby, which at the time when he refused the defendant's request was fat and healthy, had refused to be suckled and had grown so puny that its death was hourly expected. To cap the climax of this remarkable trial, the defendant, after hearing the evidence, confessed her guilty of the charge. The justice gave the farmer judgment for 3 and the costs of the suit, which I don't really understand. Maybe
meaning that she
3
had
counts.
to pay him for what it cost him to
must
go to court.
Must have. Mother Fisher had a curiosity in the strange volume, printed in the German language and over 800 years old. It was called The Book of Wonder. Now I'm suddenly curious about the Book of Wonder.
I want to know about the Book of Wonder too.
It was brought from Germany by a female ancestor who came to Lancaster County with the Dunkers in 17, and then the date was inked out. The ancestor was also noted as a witch woman, and there had been one in the family ever since until the death of Barbara Fisher, who was the last of her line because she had never married.
Oh.
The Wonder Book was a ponderous volume bound in its heavy covers, secured by brass clips. No other hand but hers was ever permitted to touch the precious book, and from it she drew inspiration for her wonder working. This shrewd and cunning beldam could never be induced by any offer to try her powers on a stranger or on anyone who lived outside of the neighborhood in which she lived, every resident of which she knew. Her neighbors went to her for consultation and for advice from miles around. To her, husbands took their wives, parents, their children, lovers, their sweethearts, or themselves for treatment for all ills, for the removal of evil spoils, and for charms that they believed to be potent in love and business or in the satisfying of vengeance. If a child was, and I'm going to say this next sentence, but it reads as an 1800 sentence. If a child was liver grown, a visit to Dom Fisher was never delayed. For a child to be liver grown is an ailment that seems to be peculiar to the disease vocabulary of these hexawiver, what it does not seem to be exactly known to anybody. But if the child was ill and the parents consult a wonder worker, and she tells them that it's liver grown, also they keep referring to the child as it.
Well, I guess a general, like the child, depending, I don't know.
I guess. Maybe they couldn't go over a certain character count.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Find her place.
It. Child with it. Oh, A Child Called It. That book rocked me. Read that in middle school.
I don't think I read that.
Oh my God. It's a trilogy. It's a book by this man named David something or Dave something, but it's about his life as this like severely abused child.
Why did you read books like that in middle school?
I don't know.
Were you told to read this book?
No.
Okay. Just your own little reading list.
You know what?
And you make sense.
I think my mom had read it and told me about it. And then my curiosity got the best of me. And I was like, I have to read it.
Your mom didn't tell you to read it. She just told you that she read it. And then you were like, I want to read it. It
was something like that. Someone had told me like they read this really heartbreaking book. And I was like, well, now I have to break my own heart and read it too.
Okay.
And it's one of the books where like you do get nauseous and feel like you're going to throw up reading it. It is horrible, horrible, horrible. Like the worst.
Okay, well, now
ever.
I want to read it.
Well, he gets things turned around.
Okay,
So
good.
The Child Called It. The second one is about him in foster care and some of the bad stuff that happens then. And then the last book is about him like establishing himself in adulthood and trying to overcome some of those things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really beautiful series, but it's a really
And true story.
true story. Yeah.
Wow.
It's his autobiography. Okay. If she tells them that it is liver grown, they consider that misfortune has fallen heavily on them. This is an example of how like the typos go. It goes, Ana mi sympathy. And sympathy of their friends and neighbors goes out to them indeed.
Okay.
A liver-grown child means that some witch is visiting them with her worst spells, and the greatest powers of the wonder workers must be invoked to break these spells and render them powerless in the future. So
I wonder,
it's a curse. It's a hex.
It's as if like another witch is cursing their child. But I do wonder if this was like, unfortunately, like child cancer or something like that maybe wasn't as understood back then.
Different diseases and ailments. Yeah. There are still mystery diseases.
100%. We don't know everything yet.
Illnesses. Yeah.
We know nothing still. But it sounds like people were going to her for good, as well as maybe just like this one farmer had a beef with her. But
yeah, but then there were other people that came to, but then who knows? Like
she was open to doing curses and healing.
Yeah, she did. She dabbled in both.
Yeah.
And she had her secret little book that she wouldn't let anyone else touch.
I love the Book of Wonder.
The Book of Wonder.
Yeah, it makes you want to wonder.
It does. Only a short time ago, in the busy borough of Columbia, the second largest town in Lancaster County, the wife of a well-known and prosperous businessman consulted a witch woman of that place, her baby being ill. The witch woman went through certain powwow ceremonies and then informed the mother that the child was liver grown. The grief of the mother was great and increased as the charm of the witch woman failed, and the child still remained under the spell. Brooding over her affliction, the poor woman lost her reason. She became so violent that she was placed in the state insane asylum in Harrisburg.
Gosh.
She died there a week later, raving over the affliction that had befallen her babe. It was not the misfortunes of humanity alone that Dom Fisher was called upon to minister by her neighbors. If a farmer had a breeching cow, its sheep had the murrain. If crops looked bad, old Barbara's aid was sought at once.
See, she's super helpful.
Totally.
It's one of those things where it's like people, they feared her, but they revered her because they understood that she had the ability to help. I would for sure fear her in the sense that like, don't ruffle her feathers in the wrong way.
And even if she never did anything bad ever, and these are all just lies, if you're experiencing someone who you believe has so much power, even if they're only using it for good, it's still a power that when you go home at night, you start to wonder about.
If she can do that, what else can she do?
Right. A horse was never stolen in the neighborhood while Dom Fisher lived there, which she was not asked to recover, and the catching of the thief was also desired. That was a serious undertaking for her, but she never hesitated a moment to both catch the thief and recover the horse, provided the owner of the stolen horse would first give her 3 hairs from its tail.
From the horse?
Yeah.
First?
Maybe from a horse's tail.
Okay.
Or just like agree that you give 3.
I guess
3
I would
hairs
always just like keep 3 hairs of my horse's tail on.
Ready to go.
In stock.
Baggied up.
In stock.
In your Ziploc bag back in the 1800s.
Just so that in case anything were to happen. Because it's almost like, I feel like in order to trace someone or to have some spell done with a person, having something that belongs to them is always
that's interesting.
Used.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it was
I was thinking of it strictly for future spells, but you're thinking of it for like actual tracking.
To try to find
magical tracking.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. These hairs, she insisted, we're about to find out.
Oh, great.
These hairs, she insisted, must have been picked up in the stall the horse had occupied and dropped there by the horse itself, and not hairs that might have been kept on bod in case of emergency. Okay, so...
So if there was no horsehair left behind, you're screwed.
I feel like that's magic in and of itself, that you just asked a question and then immediately the next sentence was like, she was like, no, that's not.
That's not what I want.
That's literally exactly what you said was wrong.
But not that.
And this is what I wanted. As stolen horses are not in the habit of carefully dropping 3 hairs out of their tails in the stalls as a precaution against possible thieves, the finding of the desired number was not always an easy thing to do. But if the hairs were obtained, Dom Fisher would proceed at once to get back the stolen property and bring the thief to justice.
Wow.
She cut the hairs so that they could be of equal length and then tied them together in the middle. At sunset, the owner of the stolen horse must take the hairs to his barnyard, place them on a shovel, and light them at both ends.
Oh, this is interesting.
She's instructing other people to do a little spell.
Yeah.
Whichever way the two ends of the hairs turned as they burned indicated the direction the thief had gone. The short ends of the burned hair were then to be buried in the barnyard. This ceremony placed a spell on the thief that prevented him from getting beyond a certain limit and finally forced him to turn and drive or ride back in the direction that he had gone until he came upon the very farm that he had stolen the horse.
That is so cool. I love this spell.
I know. In spite of the fact that no horse thieves ever came back with any with any of his plunder after thus placing him under this spell, unless he was accompanied by the constable, Barbara Fisher always got the credit for fetching him back. If the thief or horse never appeared, Dom Fisher simply told the person that she was using her power and that he lacked faith in her or had deceived her with the hairs.
I was going to say.
Either of which was sufficient to destroy her power.
I totally believe that she had power, but I also think she was extremely intelligent in the sense that, like, she knew the limitations that she had. And then also, like, her power can't always work. If she's expending herself in so many ways that she came up with it has to be hairs that were left behind by the horse, because then there's so much more room for error.
Totally.
Not her error, your error.
Your error. Don't get in the way of the spell.
Yeah.
Do everything.
Don't fuck up.
A very strict amount of rules. There's no like, oh, well, maybe if you do this, it'll still work.
Yeah.
Dom Fisher did not scruple to use her wonder-working powers for evil as well as good. She would, for the proper fee, give an applicant a charm to ward off lightning from his buildings, or one that may make his enemies' cows give bloody milk.
Oh.
She would bring lovers together and marry them happily, or separate man and wife, just as her customers desired. She would undertake to restore a person to health, or to prostrate a whole family with illness with equal readiness. Whether it was to scatter blessings or call down evils, she did not hesitate to act accordingly to the wishes of her patrons.
As long as they paid, right?
Yeah, and the size of the fee.
Exactly.
And as strange as it may seem, she succeeded in maintaining such implicit confidence in her powers in the community where she had lived and operated for more than 60 years, that at her death, her reputation as wonder worker was as great and unquestioned as it ever had been.
I love her.
She is like the lore behind Mother Fisher.
She does remind me of Hannah Cranna a bit.
Yeah. I'm so curious if she, similar to Hannah Cranna, had like very specifics with when she died, how she wanted to be buried or like what ceremony.
Exploded into glitter and bats.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it is wild. I mean, I guess she was to blame, because I was like, the cows giving bloody milk, they're blaming her, but they should blame the person who asked for the curse. But she could have said no to doing it. It's complicated, but she was a complicated woman, and she was clearly very powerful,
right,
and respected in her community, and people went to her, I'm sure, for good more than they went to her for bad.
And also, a witch has to make a living, so you can't fault her for that.
Especially the witch in the woods who lives in this little hut. She needs to eat. She needs 3 horse hairs. She's gotten some needs.
She's got some needs, and she's being very straightforward about it. Sounds like people know what's up.
She doesn't seem to be denying much at all.
If my cows started bleeding, I would go to her and say, hello, I know someone cursed me. Help me either curse them back or help me protect my cows. Like anti-curse, you know?
You know what's interesting is it did allude to this community having more witches. Or like at least like her lineage and people in this general area having more witchcraft ability. So I wonder if she was just like she was like mother she was the most witch. Powerful.
Well, I'm curious too if she passed down her book. Who has the book now?
Right, I don't know, because her family line ended with her.
But did she have a apprentice?
Right. Or is the book buried with her somewhere?
That's sick. Let's go dig up a body.
Book of Wonder?
Let's dig up a body.
That's one way to freaking get cursed by a witch who's unafraid to use.
Yeah, truly. Okay, well, I have one. This is actually an obituary of a man who passed away more recently and is kind of infamous in the psychic medium space. His name is Colin Fry, and you might recognize his name. We'll have a photo of him, but he was a television host of Sixth Sense and then Most Haunted in the UK.
Oh, I bet I would recognize him.
I think you would.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read his obituary and then I'll share a little bit more information about him. Colin Fry was born on May 19th, 1962 in Haywards Heath, West Sussex. His mother, Margaret, a student nurse, had intended to remain home after the birth, but suffered from postpartum depression and decided that work would be beneficial. Colin was raised in large part by his maternal grandmother, Lillian, with whom he shared a close, and he would say, psychic bond. From an early age, Colin became aware of an ability to perceive things that other members of his family could not. A vision of an old man, like a taller, slightly thinner version of Doctor Who, at the foot of his bed was the first glimpse of Magnus, who would become Fry's proclaimed spirit guide in adulthood. Aged 4, Colin announced the table at tea time that old Nanny, his great-grandmother, had died. A telegram.
Oh my God, at tea time? He's just like, by the way, everyone, relative
Old Nanny
down.
has died.
Old Nanny is no longer here. Now give me my extra biscuits.
More sugar, please. A telegram to that effect arrived later that day.
Oh, man.
After leaving school at 16 without any qualifications, Fry worked in the retail industry while giving demonstrations at spiritualist churches. But it was not until his stepbrother, Michael, died of AIDS in 1996 that he resolved to become a full-time medium. Fry had nursed Michael for many years and saw a chance to keep the relationship intact. But he was very clever, Fry explained in 2003. He'll often pass messages to me, not through myself, but through other mediums.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wait, I love this.
Fry went on to become a reverend of the Spiritualist Church and wrote several books on spiritual and mental well-being. A memoir, The Happy Medium, was published in 2012. The title seemed to contradict a life that had had its share of physical hardship. He became partially deaf at age 23 and relied on hearing aids in later years. Last April, he was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. As a heavy smoker, he recalled an early encounter with a fellow spiritualist who disapproved of his smoking. Fry was quoted, "This old love said to me, 'That'll kill you, you know.' And I replied, 'My love, do you honestly think that bothers me? I know where I am going.'" Colin Fry is survived by his partner, Mikey, and he died on August 25th, 2015. So I started doing more research into Colin Fry, and apparently his very first, this is a really, like, he did go through a lot of trauma and tragedy in his life, and his mom, in addition to having postpartum, actually died when he was pretty young. And he remembers his very first paranormal encounter was in 1971. He was walking home one day when an ambulance screeched by him, like really, really fast. And he heard his grandfather's voice. His grandfather had passed away in the fall prior. And the voice said, "Run home, sonny boy. That ambulance is for your mom."
No, the panic that you would feel.
And Colin went home, and sadly, tragically, his mother had fallen down the stairs and died.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then the doors to the other side were wide open. Kind of from that point on in his life, he remembered living in a very different reality from others that they did not understand. He was bullied quite a bit. He was quoted saying that the bullies knew I was gay before I knew, and they would bully him for that.
Yeah.
Slowly, he became aware of his spirit guide, who I mentioned. His name was Magnus, and Magnus played a really important role in all of the shows that he was on. Magnus was an older gentleman who told Colin that he was the director of a publishing company and had died in the early 1900s. They spoke every day, but Magnus was very coy about his life in this earthly realm. He was very much like, "That's all you need to know about me. I'm here for you to help you in your spiritual journey. Let's focus on your life because you're the one who's living right now."
It's like a therapist.
Exactly. Yeah, it is like a therapist. This is not a two-way street. Colin was asked to be on many television shows, but he turned it down over and over because he was like, "I've seen all these shows and like a lot of people claim it's bogus and are dubious of it." And even these shows kind of like he felt played like we're spoofing it or making it a mockery of it. Eventually, at the age of 40, he gave in and was on the show Sixth Sense, and then Most Haunted, which in 2015, when Fry passed away, had completed 17 seasons.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
That's Colin Fry.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to watch these shows. I'm sure I probably did, like, you know, an after school special sort of situation where I'd tune into them. But I'm very curious about like his role on those shows and if he ever had messages come to him while he was covering certain subjects.
So I think I didn't watch these shows, but I think he did speak with audiences quite a bit in some of them and would have messages come through. There was one thing that people really tried to like call him out as a hoax because there was one show where the power went out and they saw like a trick of what he was doing.
Oh.
It was like a spirit trumpet or something like that. And like he was actually holding it.
Oh.
But he's proven himself so many other times. Yeah. And he says that he was really early on in his career that he did in the beginning resort to some tricks in order to make the show happen in case like spirit wasn't coming through him, which I understand.
Yeah. And also it's like the pressure of production.
100%.
You know, the production crew is always going to convince you to do something that you don't want to.
Right.
That's literally the entire series of The Bachelor, Bachelorette is producers getting the contestants drunk and convincing them to do and say certain things.
But I also even think of like artists who are performing night after night, like a Taylor Swift. I'm not saying that Taylor Swift lip syncs, but like I would not be upset if I found out occasionally she lip syncs because she's
take a break.
Performing nonstop night after night after night.
I would expect that Taylor Swift would do some songs every here and there. Because
every now and then.
She's doing like a 3-hour set every night for a year. You're going to lose your voice.
Exactly. So I get it.
Yeah, me too.
Do you have a listener story?
Oh, yes, I do. Okay, this is from Isabella. Hi, ladies. I'm new to the podcast. I'm on episode 58 and I'm binging it at my extraordinarily boring desk job. And I wanted to share my encounter with you.
Okay, great.
In 2021, my great-grandmother, Nona Raffaella, was on her deathbed. Her daughter, my maternal grandmother, had been taking care of her for the previous several years. One particularly bad day in October, I'd come to visit and was certain that she would pass that night. So I insisted on staying over as I didn't want my grandparents to deal with everything alone. I worked at a funeral home for 6 years prior to this, so I was pretty familiar with what needed to be done. My grandmother, grandfather, and I all took turns staying with Nona Raffaella because we didn't want her to be alone when she passed.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, my grandmother was taking her shift and came to wake me up. She knew it was about to happen. The three of us watched her pass away, the death rattle and all, at 2:01 a.m. None of us slept anymore that night. We just prepared for her funeral. In the morning/afternoon, the rest of the family all gathered at my grandparents' house. I was sitting in the living room writing the obituary with my sister, and everyone else was in the kitchen looking at photos when I heard my great-grandmother's very distinct voice singing a song that she always did in life.
Oh.
I looked at my sister and I said, wow, I must be really sleep deprived. I thought I just heard Nona Raffaella singing. And she looked at me wide-eyed and said, now? Like just now? You heard that? And I said, yeah. And then with a panicked voice, she said, I just heard it too. We both ran into the kitchen and asked the rest of the family if they had been singing Nona Raffaella's song, and they had no idea what we were talking about.
Oh my gosh.
The day of the funeral, we gathered again at my grandparents' house, and as me and my sister's boyfriend, who admittedly does not believe in the paranormal, were saying goodbye, I saw a white figure pass into the living room towards where Nona Raffaella's recliner was.
Oh.
I looked at my sister's boyfriend, who went sheet white. I said, did you see her too? And he just stared with his mouth agape.
He saw her.
After these encounters, I felt so at peace with her passing. It was clear to me that Nona had gone to a better place. I hope you ladies enjoyed my story. I have another that I'll share some other time, but greetings from Toronto. Stay spooky, Isabella.
I hope they played that song at her service or at her funeral.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It was like, because it was her, the two of them sitting there writing the obituary.
Yeah.
And that's when the song comes in. So maybe it was a reminder of like, okay, so you're doing some plannings here.
Yeah.
Preparing for the services. So don't forget my favorite song.
I also am curious what song it was. Sing it for us, Isabella.
Sing it.
Don't send us it. Send us a voice note of you singing
it.
Yes, please. Okay, I have an email from our listener, Chris. And trigger warning, it does have motorcycle death.
Okay.
Hey, y'all, I recently discovered your podcast and I've been letting it terrify me ever since. This incident happened to myself and my daughter, Paige, in 2004 and is perfect for y'all. So I wanted to share. I had driven to the bank with my 3-year-old daughter. This was in 2004. And I parked facing the road that the bank was on. There was a small culvert and then a busy 4-lane road just in front of my parking spot. I went to the back of my car to get my daughter out of her car seat, and I heard a series of strange noises that all happened in the same second. I looked up and walked forward to see a man on a motorcycle had run a red light and slammed into the side of a box truck. I won't go into details, but he was not wearing a helmet, and it was clear that he was deceased.
Yeah.
I pushed my 3-year-old back into the car, shut the door, ran into the bank, and screamed for them to call 911, and then ran back to my car. After emergency services arrived, we left, and I did everything I could to act like I was fine, other than asking if she saw anything. I really did not discuss this accident with my daughter. That night, I put my daughter to bed and went into my room to watch movies and just unwind for the night. A few hours passed, and it was around 2 or 3 a.m., and I heard some noise coming from the baby monitor. Then I heard my toddler's tiny toddler voice say, "Who are you?" A few seconds passed, and I heard, "Oh, I'm fine. No, I didn't see it."
Stop. Stop. Wait, this is so heartwarming.
I know. It was clear she was having a conversation with someone, only I couldn't hear the other person's voice. But I had this sense of calm come over me, so I didn't feel the need to rush into my daughter's room. This has been something that has always frustrated me because I feel like I should have run to her, but it was as if I was being held still by a hug. After around 2 minutes of this conversation, my daughter said, "I'm sorry you died." "Okay, thank you. Night, night." And immediately after she said night, night, that feeling of being held and hugged let go, and I ran to check on her. She was sound asleep, tucked in, and cuddling with a stuffed animal. The next morning, I asked her how she slept and asked if she had any dreams, and she said no, but that the man on the motorcycle came to visit her.
So she remembered.
I asked her for the details, and this is what she said. Keep in mind, she was 3, so this is what she told me, and I've just translated it into adult language from her adorable toddler speak. She said, "I was sleeping, and someone sat on my bed. He said, 'Paige, Paige?' And he wiggled me a little bit, so I woke up. He was crying. I couldn't really see him, but I knew he was hurt. He told me that he was so sad that I saw what happened, and he wanted to make sure I was okay. I told him I didn't see anything, I only heard it, and that my mummy was scared. He told me he didn't wear a helmet and it made him go to heaven. He said he would make sure that I stayed safe, and he's really going to miss his wife and kids. I knew he came to visit her, but I kept trying to convince her and myself that it was a dream. Then she told me the name of his wife, his son, and his daughter. The next morning, this man's obituary was in the paper. There, in black and white, were the names my daughter told me."
Full chills. Full chills. Oh my God.
It's so sad and so beautiful because this man knew she witnessed it and wanted to make sure she was okay and that it didn't impact her.
Yeah. Especially he's a father too. So he probably was thinking like, oh my God, there was a little kid who saw this.
If you remember, I left as soon as emergency services arrived. She was in the back of my car with the door shut and windows up the entire time. There were no details that anyone gave me at the scene of the accident. There was no way either of us would have known any of the names. It was proof, to me at least, that this could have only been one thing. The man on the motorcycle had come to visit my daughter.
Wow.
Paige is now 20 and still remembers this visit. Has lost some of the details as time has gone on, but she is sensitive to the other side and has had other encounters since, although she has never had another encounter with the man on the motorcycle. If you're interested, I'll send you the story of the time I traveled back in time and learned something about our tiny town that no one living knew until the building was demolished and lost the history of the old city hall was uncovered, just as I had seen it 80 years before I was born.
What the hell?
Thanks for listening.
Send us that.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Wear a helmet, Chris.
Oh my God.
Okay. Well, one, Chris, you need to send us the time travel story. What?
Yeah.
And then, as tragic as this man's death is, what a incredible paranormal experience.
I know. And it's so sweet too, because it's like, not only did this man want to make sure that she was okay, because I'm sure he was going to explain to her like what happened or try to like show himself so that she was less scared of what she saw, to be like, I'm okay, I'm going somewhere better, to try to, help her.
To help her.
But then he saw Chris run to go help him. So he embraced her in this warm hug.
I know.
Basically like give her thanks.
And also to probably let him have his time with Paige, because Paige, I think he really wanted to relay this message to her.
Right.
I also am so curious if his family had any encounters with him.
Yeah.
Because if he was able to be so present with her, I'm curious. Anyway.
Yeah, because it does make you think that he probably visited his family first, and then before he was moving on, he was like, I should probably check on that kid.
Because it was like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah, just to make sure. It's so interesting. I also am curious, and maybe Chris can tell us about her daughter, because now she's
20,
an adult. Yeah. If growing up, if that moment changed Paige's perspective on death. Like if perhaps Chris had to explain fewer things to her because she understood from that encounter. Like when an animal passed away or a relative passed away, understood what that meant because of this encounter.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And conversation with the man. The man who told her, this little girl, about his family and the names. And it was enough that she remembered.
Yeah.
Too.
And then it was proven the next day in the obituary. Like there's literally no other way that she would have known the name of the wife, daughter, and son.
Right.
No way. Because they didn't even know the name of the man.
No. And the fact that she did remember, like, I understand that children are like sponges and they absorb things and you never know what they'll pick up on or remember. But the fact that she, in the middle of the night, was awoken was told these names and then in the next morning can relay all 3 names does make me feel like there is some sort of paranormal intervention at play to make sure
That she
that this was
remembered.
relayed to Chris so Chris could be like, boom.
Wow. Y'all are freaking magical and we love you. And I hope you join us on Patreon where we are going to write each other's obituaries.
I might cry when I write it.
I'm going to write a funny one.
Well, same.
Okay.
But it's still kind of horrible to think about.
We will punt it until the holidays.
The hormones are less intense.
Once baby is here. If you have any ghost stories, please email them to us at twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to hear us read obituaries to each other that we write for one another, plus also get episodes 1 week early and ad-free, and a bonus episode every month, and Campfire Stories live every Tuesday where you can share your ghost stories with us live, join us on Patreon. It's $5 a month and you get all of that and more.
Shout out to Jamie Ryan, who edits our audio and video. Thank you for editing out our 4 pee breaks.
We love you all so much.
And we will see you on the other side.